are. We're here at Blackmagic with Dan, checking out some new products, Dan.
Yep.
Almost every year we're seeing a new camera from you guys, and not one, but two this year, and some really awesome upgrades. So let's get started. First big thing everybody wants to know about the Ursa Mini. It's amazing, and I have to say personally that it seems this year, more than any other year, you guys have really listened to your customer base and tried to create a camera that is exactly what most people are looking for.
Yeah, we knew last year when we came out with Ursa that there was going to be a bit of, like that's so amazing, but there'll be other things we want. We knew we needed to get that full-size camera out. We saw that opportunity there, the ability to have the upgradable sensor, the ability to have higher frame rates in the bigger body. So we knew that was kind of the starting point. We also knew we'd be getting some feedback about saying, look, we'd like a smaller camera, and we knew that was coming because that's why we obviously had our original kind of smaller form factor. So it was great because we knew we were going to be working on this, and we got a tremendous amount of great feedback. So that was all able to be put into the Ursa Mini, which obviously is a smaller version, more of a single-person, handheld, run-and-gun type of camera. So whether I'm putting it on the shoulder, or I'm holding it with my hand, or I'm throwing it on the tripod really quickly, kind of that flexible one-person unit, but has much of the same Ursa functionality, still recording to the CFast cards, still has the great touch screen on here, now the one monitor on there, and it's got the look and feel of that still professional handheld camera. So we're tremendously excited about this camera as a whole. Of course, the big thing is being able to announce that new 4.6K sensor as well, which is going to be an upgrade for Ursa folks for about $2,000 for the EF model. On the Ursa Mini, we have the option of saying, do you want to get it with the 4K sensor, which is a great sensor, and starting price at $3,000 makes it a great camera at that price, or you can buy it for $2,000 more with that new 4.6K sensor. Now, the big thing with the 4.6K sensor is it has up to 15 stops of dynamic range over the 12 of the original 4K. So that's a huge amount more of dynamic range because every stop is twice as much. And then of course the native ASA on it is also 800, so it's going to have a bit more latitude in the actual 4.4K sensor as well, 4.6K sensor. Tongue's getting a little tired on day 3. So some exciting things, but it's not an upgradable sensor, so you're going to need to know which you want. Do you want the 4K? Do you want the EF? Do you want the 4.6K or PL? You're going to need to know before you buy. But so far, tremendous amount of feedback that we're really excited about. The optional shoulder kit for $395, the new optional viewfinder for $1495 also helps people understand, look, they see it, it's run and gun, I totally get it, it's what I've been looking for, thank you Blackmagic, and we're so happy to be able to show it here at the show.
Absolutely. So, I mean, the cinema camera, for what it was, it's still kind of in that range of the DSLR.
Yep.
Good form factor in that realm. Not traditional though, there's a lot of accessories you had to do to kit it out.
Yep.
We've got XLRs, we've got V-mount or
gold
battery
yep.
packs. We're seeing that traditional form factor that we want. We're seeing the durability that we see in the Ursa, which is great. I mean, for as heavy as it is, it's also a beautifully well-designed camera.
Yep.
But a smaller form factor. And at $3,000 entry, this is going to be great for that filmmaker that's for either starting or just wants to get something that is a good quality camera.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were actually kind of reflecting internally after the first day of the show, and we were saying it's interesting. Had we come out with this camera, the first camera we had done, it almost feels like you wonder, would people have said, oh, it looks like you're trying to mimic somebody else? But because we started with that kind of almost shocking new form factor that we did with the 2.5K and have worked our way to here, it's a much different feel when we now come out with a camera and people say, look, we see this progression, we see where you've come, we see what you're doing to listen, and it's great because that's all true. We really have taken all this feedback and be able to build these new and amazing products, and we're very proud of both our original camera and our current Ursa full-size camera, and of course now the Ursa Mini as well. So it is a great and exciting thing for us to be able to continue to put these products out, and we've got a tremendous amount of positive feedback so far.
All right, so what's the weight of just this camera?
So when you buy just the camera by itself, what you end up getting is just this main body and this handle down here, which has the light control to be able to do the autofocus, auto iris, and record. And that usually sits up on the rosette up here. That weighs about a little under 6 pounds, 3 kilos, but I think a little under 6 pounds there. Obviously, it's going to gain more weight the more you put on it. You put the battery, you put the lens on. The shoulder kit, like I said, was the option. The EVF is an option. So this whole kit right now with battery and lens is probably sitting about 10-ish pounds right now, so it's not like it's super light, but at 10 pounds, it's not tremendously heavy either. So
as an Ursa owner, Was this like you work with a regular Ursa?
Well, that just works with normal length. So in theory, we could be putting that out there. The shoulder kit is specifically only for Ursa Mini, so it's really more designed for this. But the EVF will work with any. It's just a standard 1080 output that goes to the EVF. The nice part up here is this is a 1080 OLED display up here, so it's really crisp and beautiful up there. Has false color, has focus charts and focus assist. Has a great little sensor under it, so when you pull away, it will actually turn off to not drain your battery. So a lot of well thought out for a essentially HD 1495 viewfinder there.
Okay, so Ursa Mini, we've been talking about that. Let's talk about the differences between the 4K and the 4.6.
Sure. The big thing you're going to see here on this particular camera, because you get higher frame rates on your main Ursa, but the big things on the Ursa Mini is that 4.6K sensor, like I said, is up to 15 stops of dynamic range. And the reason why we clarify that is when you do, in this new sensor, you have the ability to choose to do rolling or global shutter. You can do on a 4K. With a 4K image, you can go up to 60 frames per second with a rolling shutter, and that's going to give you the full 15 stops. When you go to do the global shutter, it will go up to 30 frames per second, but you're going to lose about a stop and a half is where we think it's going to end up being. So the great part is you get the choice there. Do I want to have some higher frame rates and I want the full dynamic range, but I can live with a little bit of the rolling shutter, or do I absolutely need to have the global shutter because I am doing some kind of fast-moving tracking shot, knowing that I need to have a little less frame rate, and I can deal with the stop and a half of dynamic range that I'd be losing there. So it makes the specs really confusing, but that's why we say it says up to 15 stops of dynamic range.
Can you explain any of the technical differences of what causes that?
It's more engineering language than I know how to explain really well, but that's essentially where the trade-off comes from in there.
Okay. You mentioned a native ISO of 800.
That's correct.
ASA. Is there going to be a range that we have?
We think it's going to end up similar to our original 2.5K, where it'll be about 200 to 1600. We're hoping that it should end up there. Of course, as we kind of finish up the development there, we'll see if we can push it farther or that we can push it that far, but we kind of expect to be in that 200 to 1600 range with the native 800 ASA.
Okay. What about, we'll know some fixed noise patterns with the current Ursa. Is that anything that's...
I think this is a whole sensor that we've had kind of custom developed, so we're trying to get, obviously all of that ironed out as well. The images, all the cameras out there are showing the 4.6K sensor. We obviously are targeting July for this. It will ship when it's done, so we're going to do our best to make sure that it's obviously going to be the highest quality that we can provide out there. I won't be surprised if we end up shipping the first models with just the 4K sensor, and then the 4.6K sensors that we do get may first go out to Ursa upgrades perhaps, and then we'd start rolling them into the Ursa Mini. So there'll be a little bit of the deck shuffling of the chairs as we get to that July-August time frame, but obviously we've got a little bit more work to do to finish these up. Got to get the full supply of parts rolling off the line and then into the factory. So we're gonna have to play it by ear. We know none of this is very easy. We've been through this before, but we're really hoping to be able to start rolling these off the line in January. Yeah, July. How about?
Okay. So, people that are considering doing that upgrade for their Ursas, obviously they're going to be looking at sensitivity. The 4.6K gives you options for cropping and stuff like that. We'll go back to the black dot sun issue. I know that's been something that you guys aren't the only ones that suffer from this.
Yep.
It's happened for many other cameras. Do you have any updates in that realm?
So we're going to continue to work on all of those things. We had a big update last Friday for the current sensors to do on the 2.3 update to do some higher frame rates. We're going to continue to work on improvements there. I know in the 4.6K sensor we've done a bunch of test shoots. I think there's some video that made it online on Monday, I hope, that shows a bunch of us shooting into the sun and shooting the headlights. So we know on that sensor we've got it licked already, which we believe we've got it licked at least. So I know on the 4.6 sensor we're working that. We're going to have to continue to work on the 4K sensor to continue to make improvements there. It's a masking issue that we have to continue to work on, but none of it's very easy, which is why we're not the only people that have to deal with that as well.
So on the 4.6K sensor, are there any frame rate changes for either of the cameras?
Well, the big thing is we just added that new HD window mode, which does give you higher frame rates. So on this particular camera, we are able to go up to 120 frames in that HD mode. Again, 60 frames for the rolling shutter for the 4K. Essentially, the Ursa, you can do twice as much. So we now have a 240 frames per second in the windowed HD mode with the 4.6K sensor, then the 120 frames for the rolling shutter and the 60 frames. So it's another big differentiator between the Ursa being able to do those higher frame rates than we have on the Ursa Mini. So this is kind of a heat electronics. There's a number of things that go into that, but we are happy to be able to do those upgrades and see newer, higher frame rates on these cameras as well.
And it's like what we talked about last year. Part of the reasons that the Ursa had the design of it. You
Yep.
put the cooling system in there was so that you can offer these functional
Exactly.
upgrades.
The nice part here is that we know there's a lot of people that will just instantly gravitate to this, because if you're a small shop and one of these is great because you can get around and do it. But the other great part is, like, if I'm a bigger place, I can have one main Ursa that maybe is my main. I'm going to go shoot an independent film or a movie, but I can grab one or two of these and I can have them walking around, have them on the shoulder, use them handheld. Nice part is that all the same sensor, conceivably, if you put all there, and they're all going to cut together just beautifully, even though they're the same camera family and they are different, it's the same sensor. So we think there's going to be a lot of great opportunities for small independents as well as bigger studios that want to have multiple cameras and multiple functionality.
One issue that I've noticed, and again, this is across many cameras, IR filtration when NDing down. That's an issue. Is there anything that would happen?
No, we still haven't done any ND filters yet. That has to be used by third parties. We know it's out there. We know people are aware of it. It goes back to the same thing I think I mentioned to you earlier off camera was, we'd come with 80 products if we had the ability to have the engineering time in there. But hey, 38 new SKUs, not bad for NAB. We'll continue to look down in the future at what we'd like to do and, see what we can put out in the upcoming years.
Right. Now, we just mentioned the upgradability of the original Ursa. Are we reaching the limits of it, or do you guys think there's a couple upgrades on there?
I think software-wise, there's still more things we'd like to do on there. I'm not sure. Originally last year we talked about doing a B4 mount for that camera as well. That's something that's still kind of on the table for us. For us, we knew we wanted to get this out, so that kind of took priority over that. Again, we have lots of ideas of things we need to do. We need to kind of get into the lab, start working with stuff, and see what we can do. But I think the Ursa chassis still has plenty of life in it there. So, going out and buying it, it's just got a slight price reduction. Obviously going to have the new sensor. I think we're still going to get a lot of life out of both of these cameras right now.
And then with, you mentioned the price reduction, that upgrade, if obviously you'll sell the 4.6K Ursa version
down the road. Yep.
But there won't be a price penalty for people that want to buy it now and upgrade later.
On the EF, that ends up being the case. So essentially, if you were to buy a Ursa EF now, it'd be the same price doing that $2,000 upgrade 7 months from now or whenever you would end up doing that, because it works out to be the same price. On the PL, it's a $500 delta because we have to charge $2,500. The PL always ends up being a more expensive turret to manufacture. So they'll have a $500 kind of surcharge to do a buy today, do the upgrade later. But it's $500. We try to keep it as minimal as possible. If they really want to use it now, we'd like to think they'll be able to get over that.
All right, Dan, you've got a mini, you've got a pocket, now you got a micro.
Yeah, we wanted to, so many people have used their cameras in amazing situations we never even really dreamed about doing, and part of that's just simply the cost of the cameras. When you start talking about a $2,000 or a $1,000 camera, it's something that people are more comfortable saying, I want to put up on a drone, or I want to put in a crash cam situation, corner of a car. So we started to look at what we could really do to kind of reduce the size of our already really small pocket camera. And what we ended up doing was creating these micro camera style body. Now what we see on this camera is it actually has no monitor on that at all. There's a couple reasons for that. If you're going to put a camera up on a drone, you really don't need a monitor in there. Or if you're going to stick it in the corner of the car, it's really difficult to look through the windshield of the car to figure out if the camera's in focus or not. So the first thing we were able to do was basically strip off the actual monitor from the camera. We also wanted to put all of our transport controls in the front, because if you're going to be looking at something that's tucked away in the corner, I just want to be able to hit record, see that my tally light comes on, and know that I'm good to go. Now the trick with this camera is there's two nice parts. First, we have the HDMI out, and that's what's going to go over to your other monitor to be able to make all your adjustments. So if I want to see what my menu is and adjust the ISO settings, I can do that all on the HDMI output. You also see this great expansion port on here. And what we've done on the micro cinema camera has been able to have all of our kind of transport controls go out that. So I can now, we have them showing out in the booth, up on a drone somewhere, and all of those pinouts are just contact points to say, start recording, zoom, focus, iris adjustment. Be able to stick that up on a drone, instead of hitting record and send it off, I can actually get it up there and make sure it's in position and start my recording process. If I put it in that underwater housing, being able to have all that transport control available to in a physical form that goes through this little expansion port here.
A lot of people might be a little confused at what this camera is for. We talked about drone, crash cam, all that kind of stuff. What is this aimed for specifically?
I mean, the real thing is just having it to be small. At the end of the day, the reason why we put it up on a drone and we show pictures of it with the drone is because people can instantly understand what that's for. It's for it being that small camera. But it's basically, it's still essentially a pocket camera. It's the HD version of a camera with 13 stops dynamic range. It's still recording to ProRes and RAW, so it's still a cinema camera at the end of the day. And that's the big difference between a lot of the action cam type cameras you see out there. They're great, they're affordable, but they record to not ProRes as in RAW, and they have fixed optics on there. So this still has that great micro four thirds on there, so we can choose what kind of great optics we want to put on. It's still going to have that cinema codec capabilities and great post-production workflow, and that's the big upgrade you're seeing with the micro cinema camera.
And of course, it's you can choose what lens you want. You've got that. It's a Super 16 sensor, so you've got to calculate that in. No, it does record internally. Like, so this is just a sensor that goes out to something else.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a recorder that you're linked
That's correct. This does have the actual same SD card slot like you would see on our pocket camera, and it records the same formats essentially that you would have seen on there as well. So you send it up, you get it recording, it comes back down, you pull out your SD card, and you're ready to start editing.
Awesome. All right, Dan. Resolve is definitely one of my favorite tools. As a cinematographer, I love being able to create exact looks that I want, especially being able to use cameras like this where there's so much more flexibility. But you guys have continued to push Resolve even further into the realm of the NLE.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we've obviously been in this market for a long time. We've worked with a lot of NLE partners, and we kind of understand how serious it is to go out and claim to be an NLE. And last year we had some 120 new features, I think, all on the editing side, but we knew it still wasn't really ready to be called an NLE. But at some point, you can't just continue to add feature after feature, say it's not an NLE. 80 new features this year across Resolve 12. We felt like it was time to call it an NLE. It walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. At some point, you have to say, look, it is a duck. And it's this fabulous new capabilities that we have throughout there with the new multicam editing, a ton of new audio updates we've done with the VST and the AU audio plugins, just cleaning up the UI to make it a little bit easier to use, a little bit more friendly, a little easier on the eye even. So, a tremendous amount of work has gone into Resolve 12 to continue to make it be the best application it can be. And just because we call it an NLE doesn't mean it has to be the NLE that you choose to use. It still has the great round tripping capabilities, and all of those editing features mean that your whole conform process is just working better with things like Adobe Premiere or Final Cut Pro 10. So it's still a great application for color grading. We already know that it's an amazing color grader. We've been adding more and more to the editing capabilities. And like you said, when you're shooting on a Blackmagic camera, there is something nice about being able to say, look, I've brought in my raw files. I don't have to do any proxies or round tripping. I can go straight through editing, color grading, skipping conform, and going straight to the delivery. Not that that's the end-all be-all of way things need to be done, but there is kind of a simple elegance about being able to work through a whole project like that as well. And that's what we're really proud to be showing with Resolve 12 this year.
So, what made you guys go this direction? I mean, obviously, we know this is a color grading software. Where do you see it fitting in the workflows of the average user?
I think that's really up to the user themselves. One of the reasons why we ended up having to keep going this direction is because we wanted to make that conform process be better and better for other NLEs. So we had to continue to add more features, and we knew that we had so many customers that were coming to us asking us as a finishing tool. They wanted to have some of those editing features just to be able to say, look, I've already had it off to my my editor in the NLE, that's their choice. We've brought it back in, we've done the conform, we're doing the color grading now, and look, we now need to do a little bit more editing because we realize we want to add this title, or we want to change slip slide some of these particular ins and outs. Do I have to actually send it back to the editor just to get that done? So we had to add some of these editing features in there, but the more we add in, the more it becomes like an editor. And at the end of the day, what it really has to become is the best application it can be, just like every application on the show floor. So being able to add these features, being able to give customers as many choices as they want, that's really what Blackmagic's always been about, being as open as we can with all of our partners. And at the end of the day, customers just want things to work. So whether they're going to use another application and then round trip into here, whether they're going to use our camera or someone else's camera, we want Resolve to be the best application that the customers can use for whatever they want to use it for. So that's kind of the thought process as we've been developing Resolve 10, Resolve 11, and now finally getting out Resolve 12. We're looking forward to having people trying it. And of course, we're going to have that amazing free version, which is tremendously powerful for people to be able to use out there in the field.
Yeah, so mentioning Resolve Lite, are the NLE functions going to be in that as well?
Yeah, essentially all the only things that are really missing in the light version of Resolve are going to be essentially the same as they are now, which is largely powerful features like noise reduction, 3D stereoscopic, and all of the kind of multiple user functionality if I want to have multiple users, or if I wanted to have sending off to other Resolve rendering stations. Those are all the kind of studio functions that you're going to find in the full version of Resolve, but all that editing functionality is still going to be in Resolve Lite. So someone today could go out and get Resolve 11, someone in a couple months could go out and get Resolve 12, and they're going to see all this editing feature right there in the application.
So what you've done is create a free editor for people that are getting started, and then as they grow in their tools and their needs, they can quickly jump up to the full version.
They cannot. The one thing that we realized, which we actually have learned with the Fusion, is we should have called Resolve Lite Resolve, because it really is a full application. And the fuller version of Resolve should have been Resolve Studio, because it was really for more of the studio type use. And you'll see that on Fusion, which of course is another great announcement we have here. We've called Fusion, and it's free because that's the Fusion application that we bought. And Fusion Studio is all the other studio type, other applications, the generation software that you'd be paying for to have tracking of changes and the like for $9.85. So, we kind of almost regret calling Resolve Lite because it sounds like it's been defeatured, but in the reality is the full version of Resolve, it's a full editor, it's a full color grader, and it's an amazing tool for delivery, even though you haven't paid anything for it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for the updates, Dave.
No problem.
Thanks to our sponsors for making our NAB coverage possible.